Hi, my name is Rachel Griesinger. Welcome to this little space I've created in my apartment. I am a New York City-based actor, theater artist, collaborator, and I work for the Anne Frank Center for Mutual Respect as well. I play Anne Frank in two touring shows that we do, and one of those is a solo show of Anne Frank. Now in New York City, we're going into our third week of isolation, or self-isolation quarantine. A lot of quotes from her diary have been popping up in my head for how to deal with this really strange thing that we're all collectively going through. Using her diary as a roadmap to help us through these unprecedented times. The first week was very anxiety-inducing for me. Putting on a little bit of makeup today and some real clothes to do this video was super helpful. It made my life feel a little bit more normal again. And I think a lot of us are struggling to find what this new normal is. And I know that for myself and a lot of people, especially those who are able-bodied, had a very different relationship to the word isolation before this started. I know for me, the term drew up images of like prison cells, and definitely Anne Frank in hiding. Now I have a much different connection to what that word is, and I want to again explore that using Anne Frank's diary. We're seeing a lot on social media. My screen time has skyrocketed since this started. It also gives me a lot of anxiety, and I'm on Instagram a lot. And people trying to produce content. What's that one thing you've always wanted to do that you didn't have time to do? Learn a new skill, work out 5 times in a day. But right now, I'm still just trying to process all of this. What I'm experiencing is grief. I'm experiencing a loss of what my life was. There's been an intense shift in our lives. And I think there's a lot of collective grieving happening, and I think we need to allow ourselves to do that. But we see Anne Frank doing the same thing. Now, yes, contextually, it's very different what she was going through, but I do believe isolation is isolation. And there was an intense shift in her life, and she was mourning a loss of her old life. This process is not linear, and I think we have to allow ourselves to feel that. Not everybody is being creative right now. Not everybody feels like being creative right now. And she didn't write every day that she was in the annex. It could be pretty all over the place. There were times where it was every few days, and then there were times where she would go 3 weeks without writing an entry. And it wasn't until a year and a half in that she actually talks about writing stories and then starting to turn that writing into something creative. Identifying for me this loss and this mourning period as that lifted a burden and a weight off of my shoulders. And hopefully it will do the same for you. In her first entry, so she calls her diary, well, dropping it, Kitty. And she says, "Dearest Kitty, so much has happened since Sunday morning. It's as if the world had suddenly been turned upside down." Just a few days after that, she writes, "Dearest Kitty, you no doubt want to hear what I think of being in hiding. Well, all I can say is that I don't really know yet. It's more like being on vacation in some strange pension. Kind of an odd way to look at life in hiding, but that's how things are." She went from feeling despair and grief to then sort of observing it and being like, well, I don't really know what this is yet. I don't know how this feels yet. I don't know what this looks like yet. It's just how things are. So I think what's interesting too is the power of self-reflection and the self-awareness it really gave her. This entry is in 1944 in March, so it's about a year and a half after she went into hiding. "Dearest Kitty, when I think back to my life in 1942, it all seems so unreal. The Anne Frank who enjoyed that heavenly existence was completely different from the one who has grown wise within these walls. The first half of 1943 brought crying spells, loneliness, and the gradual realization of my faults and shortcomings, which were so numerous and seemed even more so. The second half of the year was slightly better. I became a teenager and was treated more like a grown-up. I began to think about things and to write stories." It did take her a while to decide, oh, this can also be a creative pursuit. At first it was just processing. Every day is a little different. It's definitely similar in that way for me right now. She also had so many messages of hope in her diary, but again, those varied. And because hope is not a static, forever feeling, I think if it was, it wouldn't be called hope, right? Hope exists in sort of these little bursts. Oh, in that same entry, actually, she says, "At such moments, I don't think about all the misery, but about the beauty that still remains. This is where Mother and I differ greatly. Her advice in the face of melancholy is, think about all the suffering in the world and be thankful you're not part of it. My advice is, go outside, to the country, enjoy the sun and all nature has to offer. Go outside and try to recapture the happiness within yourself. Think of all the beauty in yourself and in everything around you and be happy." I don't think Mother's advice can be right, because what are you supposed to do if you become part of the suffering? You'd be completely lost. On the contrary, beauty remains even in misfortune. Even after this entry, she still has entries of depression, sadness, anxiety, hopelessness, but hope always finds its way back in. And she really thought that nature was very connected to that hope. So whatever you can find in your day, like for me, putting on some makeup and jeans and a sweater was pretty helpful for me today. Taking a walk around the block. One thing that also has been really nice, that has felt hopeful to me, is at night when I look out my window and I see all the other homes and apartments and floors, everybody else has their light on too. We're all at home, we're all isolated together, and seeing everybody's lights on and everybody's lives in their homes still happening gives me a sense of hope. Even if that changes a couple hours later, it still existed for that moment. So until next time, thanks for tuning in.